Everybody, welcome to the videos. I'm breaking down the Thursday Night Football showdown slate between the Atlanta Falcons and the New England Patriots. So what might not be the best game out there, 47.5 point over under, 6.5 point spread. If these teams play like they did last week, it could definitely be a blowout for the New England Patriots. I'm hoping it's close because I hate blowout games, especially in prime time. But whenever Mac Jones and Jacoby Myers are some of the best plays in the entire slate, you definitely know it's not going to be the most exciting game out there, but let's just cross our fingers and hope for the best. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, an official number over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. Cheat sheets, projections, optimizers, ownership projections for the NBA and the NFL currently. Then MLB and NASCAR once those seasons start back up again. So if you want to check it out, link can be found down below. It's what I use to personally build 150 lineups each and every single showdown site. It has been quite nice so far this season, so if you're going to check it out, you know where to find it. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by PrizePicks. I'm sure most of you know this by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you're new signing over on PrizePicks, you can get a free money bonus that's an instant deposit match up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. I think that's it for the plugs for the most part, so without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as always, we'll start with the quarterback position. I'm going to be honest, I'm not really sure why Mac Jones is not more expensive than Matt Ryan. They have the higher implied team total. The matchup is much better for Mac Jones. Their team is healthier because for Matt Ryan, if Patterson happens to be out, he's pretty much left with Kyle Pitts being his only good pass catching option. And then at that point, Bill Belichick is just going to completely scheme him out of the game because that's what we've seen from Bill throughout the years. Well, he'll just take out your favorite weapon and then make you beat him with the rest. And if that's the case, we're talking about guys like Zacchaeus, Mike Davis, Russell Gage, which is not too pretty. Matt Ryan has been somewhat solid for fantasy purposes this year, outside of a couple of games, especially last week versus the Cowboys, where he had like 2-point-something points. He should be better in this game. I think both these guys are good flex plays, but as far as being in the captain spot goes, these guys don't really run the ball too much, and I always love rushing quarterbacks in the captain spot, but guys like Matt Ryan, Mac Jones, just kind of statues back there in the pocket. Like looking at the rushing attempts per game this year, 5.9 rushing yards for Mac Jones, 4.1 rushing yards for Matt Ryan, 1 and 1.2 rushing attempts per game. Maybe they get a QB sneak in there, but we really can't expect these guys to do anything on the ground. So I think they're better suited in the flex spot. I'd rather have one of their pass catching options or a running back in the captain spot on this slate. I mean, I'd much rather play Mac Jones if we're looking at terms of the matchups. Matt Ryan facing New England, 50 versus the pass, and then only second fewest points per game at the quarterback position. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Falcons, 30th DVA versus the pass, and they're allowing the third most points per game to the quarterback position. And Mac Jones is coming off a stellar game versus the Cleveland Browns, where he looks fantastic. He definitely looks like probably the best quarterback from the rookie draft so far this season. So I think Mac Jones is definitely the play here. I mean, just higher implied team total, better weapons to get the ball to, and he's a little bit cheaper. So I'll have more Mac Jones than I will Matt Ryan. He also projects to be the best play in the entire slate. I have Mac Jones around 19 some points, with Matt Ryan coming in around 16. Both are the top two projected players in the entire slate, which not a lot of exciting players to even pick from here. So I like both in the flex spot. Mac Jones, I might have like 5 to 10% in the captain spot, maybe just a little bit more. Matt Ryan, I can't really see myself having more than probably 5% tonight when it comes to the captain spot. So then moving over to our lineup here, like I said, we can do some captain Mac Jones lineups. I'm going to be honest, the optimizer kind of likes it, but I'm going to implement rules that will restrict that to a degree because I don't really think a quarterback will be optimal tonight unless Mac Jones just happens to come out here, spread the ball around to everybody and get 5 touchdowns, which is possible, which is how we're going to play some Mac Jones, but not for the snap that we were building on this video. So we're just going to plug in both in the flex spot. It's not the pretty slate out here because outside of that, you have Cordell Patterson, Kyle Pitts, Damian Harris, Stevenson, Gallman. Gallman being $84 is kind of insane to me, but I guess we'll talk about him in a few minutes. But for right now, let's just leave both quarterbacks in the flex spot, and we'll move on to running backs. And I will say it's a bit of a mess right now for both teams because we don't know what's going to happen with Patterson. But let's start with the Patriots first because I'm more confident in the running backs than I am for the Falcons, which is basically a 3-man show of Damian Harris, Stevenson, who was fantastic in Harris's absence last week versus the Cleveland Browns, and also Brandon Bolden and J.J. Taylor, who's not really going to be much of a significant factor tonight, especially with Damian Harris being back. And I usually talk about snap counts, but it's kind of hard to do that considering that Harris was out last week, so obviously he was kind of scattered a bit. But we have seen somewhat of like a 50-30-20 split between Harris getting the most snaps and then Brandon Bolden, more of a pass-catching down kind of guy. Then Stevenson just kind of comes in to get relief of carries for Damian Harris. But since Damian Harris is back, he doesn't have an injury designation for this game. He is going to be the main back here, and Bill Belichick will feed him the rock, and I can see this being a good setup for him because they're, 6.5-point favorites versus the Falcons. They have not been good versus the run so far this year, and Bill Belichick has no problem at all just running the ball when they can, and I can see that being the case here versus the Falcons. And when Damian Harris has had opportunity this year, he has been pretty solid. The problem is he's not really using the passing game, so the floor is a little bit lower than I'd like it to be, but around 15 rushing attempts per game this year, close to rushing touchdown, over 4 yards per carry. Does have 1.5 targets per game and a 4.3% target share, with Brandon Bolden pretty much the pass catching back here with his 3 targets per game and close to a 10% target share. Stevenson also does catch some passes as well. It's a little bit of a mess here because I can see 3 running backs being involved, but Damian Harris is definitely the one I would prefer. DraftKings kind of priced Harris and Stevenson on whether whoever gets the start of Harris happened to be out, but since he's in, Stevenson is just way overpriced in my opinion. I just don't see myself really getting to him unless Harris happened to be out somehow, but that's just not going to be the case. So DraftKings did a good job pricing that because if Harris was out and Stevenson was like 4K, he'd be the mega chalk. So did a good job on that, but since Harris is in, it's going to be hard for me to want to play Stevenson because point per otherwise, not great whatsoever. And Brandon Bolden, if you just want to kind of get different, he's fine if he catches a few passes and I don't know, let's say he gets like 20 yards on 3 catches and maybe he gets a couple carries and I don't know, if you happen to find the end zone, yeah, that'd be great at $4,800, but that's not really something that we can bank on. Then for J.J. Taylor, he should not really be too involved in this game. Maybe I play a couple of J.J. Taylor lineups in a 150 max contest, but I really can't see myself having much whatsoever. And as far as the Falcons go, it's all going to depend on Patterson because if Patterson's in, he's a fine play. He's very expensive though, $10,200, but he's been great for DFS this year because he's getting you like 10 plus carries and close to 10 targets a game. Not really 10 targets a game, but anywhere from around like 5 to 10 targets, like 5 targets on average so far this year, 52 receiving yards per game, and 8.5 rushing attempts on 33 rushing yards. So he's actually been like, this is pretty good for DFS. 15% target share, like he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife in that offense. Right now, he's currently questionable, game time decision, so we'll probably know around 7 o'clock at the latest if he's going to play or not. So just going to have to wait and see, because if he happens to be out, that's definitely a big boost for a guy like Mike Davis. Wayne Gallman is really expensive at $8,400. I know we had, 15 carries last week, but you got to keep in mind, they were getting absolutely destroyed versus the Cowboys. They were just running Wayne Gallman to the ground just to get out of that game as quick as they possibly could. Mike Davis is still the guy I'd prefer over Wayne Gallman. Maybe there is a changing of the guard here, but in my opinion, I think Mike Davis is still the play at $5,800. If Patterson's out, he'll be there RB1. We know he has pass catching upside. We've seen that earlier in the season, and we saw it in Carolina. So, I mean, if he takes on someone of a Cordell Patterson row, it'd be really hard to not want to play Mike Davis at that price point. Matchup versus New England, I wouldn't say it's amazing. Dearness Johnson did have success last week. Patriots aren't really that amazing versus the run anyway. They're still 20th versus running backs, 13th DVA versus the run. But, I mean, it'd mainly just be a price thing for me if Patterson happens to be out with Mike Davis. But we'll have to wait and see because if Patterson's in, because I guess it'll be hard to gauge on how active he'll actually be. Like, if he's out there, maybe used as a decoy, that's potentially possible. But I'm just kind of hoping he's out so we have some clear value in Mike Davis on this slate, to be honest. I should mention Brandon Bolden is questionable for the Patriots, so if he happens to be out, J.J. Taylor definitely does get a bump, and at only $1,000 if he catches a couple of passes, that's not too bad. But again, I have to wait and see around 7 o'clock when we get inactives for both teams. And moving over to our lineup, I'm going to hold out using a Falcons running back until the end if we happen to be able to fit one in. I would probably lean towards using Mike Davis with the assumption that Patterson is out just for this lineup. I have no idea what's going to happen yet. But one guy I do know I want to play is Damian Harris, $8,800. I think he's fairly priced. Could honestly be a bit more expensive, but he should get us like 15 plus carries, hopefully. They could use Stevenson more, but Bill Belichick, he's the guy that will just give his main guy the ball if he's doing well. So Damian Harris in a good spot versus Atlanta, touchdown favorite on the road. We're going to plug him at $8,800, then we'll move on to the wide receivers. We'll start with the Patriots group here first. None of these guys are super expensive. We have Jacoby Myers up top, $8,000. Kendrick Bourne at $7,600. Nelson Aguilar at $5,000, and you have N'Keal Harry at $600. Looking at snap count distributions last week, we saw Jacoby Myers and Nelson Aguilar around 70%, Kendrick Bourne just under 50%, and we saw Harry right around 50% as well. Looking at the target distribution so far this season, Jacoby Myers has been the guy you have wanted the most. He gets the most targets, 7.3 per game on 5 catches, about a 23.5% target share, and a 27% market share of the team's air yards, and he finally scored his first career touchdown last weekend late in the game versus the Cleveland Browns. And as a Browns fan, it hurt, it did, but it was nice to see Jacoby Myers get a touchdown. Definitely nice to see because the guy's been trying to get one forever. Kendrick Bourne, 4 targets per game on a 13% target share. Nelson Aguilar, who I think is actually a pretty good play at this price point, and played a lot of snaps last week, He has 4 targets per game, 14% target share, and has a near 30% market share of the team's air yards. And Harry, currently questionable for this game. We'll have to see if he plays or not, but only 1.3 targets per game on a 4% target share. So for me, I am liking Jacoby Myers a lot, and I'm liking Nelson Aguilar at those price points. Kendrick Bourne is a fine play. He has been good so far this season. He got a touchdown last week, but really just depends on who fits in your lineups for the most part. There's really not much separating these guys, but Jacoby Myers is definitely the safest bet for volume. Over to the Falcons, we have Russell Gage at $6,600, Zacchaeus at $5,400, Tajay Sharp at $3,600, and you have Frank Darby and Christian Blake as your dirt cheap options. Looking at snap counts last week, Russell Gage led the team 65%, Zacchaeus just over 50%, Tajay Sharp around 40 to 50%. Then we saw Christian Blake and Frank Darby around 20 to 30% of the snaps. Keep in mind, last week was a blowout, so we'll have to see if that gets kind of reshuffled around. And then Kyle Pitts is basically the wide receiver one in this offense, even though he's listed as a tight end. So that's also something to keep in mind here. But with Kyle Pitts probably getting blanketed by Bill Belichick's defense, these guys could have some more open running room. Not saying these guys are the best players out there. If you're looking at their targets so far this year, Russell Gage has a 12% target share, Zacchaeus an 8.9% target share, Tajay Sharp at 6%, Darby at 2.9%, Christian Blake at 1.85%. Like, it is not pretty here, and plus this matchup versus the Patriots as a wide receiver, not that great either. Allowing the 7th fewest points per game in their 5th DVA versus the pass. I can't see myself having much exposure to these guys, but if I'm doing 150 lives, I'm really just going to kind of mix and match these guys and probably not have much ownership to. I'll probably be a little bit underweight. I just can't see the Falcons really doing that much in this game. Yeah, they have a 20-point implied team total. The points got to come somewhere, but it's going to be really hard to predict which guy has the best game. Yeah, Russell Gage will be the guy you want the most. He plays the most snaps and gets the most targets out of these guys, but also $6,600 for Russell Gage on this slate just does not feel that great. Moving back over to our lineup, we can kind of go any direction we want. We have around $6,500 left for the last 3 spots. We do have a captain spot, and I think we're going to probably knock out the captain for right now. Since we have Mac Jones in the flex, I want a pass catching option with him in the captain spot. And Jacoby Myers, I think, is probably the best candidate for us. He is $12,000, but really, he seems a bit underpriced. Like, there is no reason Jacoby Myers should be less expensive than Wayne Gallman, and I guess even Stevenson, just since he's not going to be the starting running back. I realized DK didn't know that beforehand, but Jacoby Myers, I think, is probably a pretty good value on the slate, to be honest, even though he's not like technically a value play. So we're going to plug him in the captain spot just to pair him up with Mac Jones. Then as far as the flex goes, we have around $4,000 left. We'll probably have to try to find a punt option. I would like to play another pass catching option with Mac Jones just because we only have Myers with them, and then we have Matt Ryan and Damian Harris. And if I have Mac Jones in the flex spot, I need to get some more pass catching options because I'm hoping he gets points from somewhere. It's not going to be from his legs. So if we used Kendrick Bourne, that would only leave us $200 left, which if you want to use a complete punt option like a Christian Blake or whoever it may be, that is viable. You could use Hunter Henry, but we haven't talked about tight ends yet. So for right now, let's just leave it blank, and then we'll talk about tight ends, defenses, and kickers, and we'll try to fill out the last 2 spots here. And moving on to the tight ends, we'll start with the Falcons here first because we have Kyle Pitts at nearly $10,000. And I got to be honest, as good as Kyle Pitts is, as much as I like Kyle Pitts, this is going to be a tough spot here versus the New England Patriots because Bill Belichick, if they can scheme Kyle Pitts out of the game and if Cordell Patterson happens to be out, the only guy they have to worry about is Kyle Pitts in this game. Because if I'm Bill Belichick, I would be more than happy to let you guys try to beat me because like Mike Davis, Zacchaeus, Russell Gage, Tajay Sharp, go ahead and try. Kyle Pitts, I would not let beat me. I mean, as talented as he is, he can surely break off a good play or a big play and score a touchdown, an amazing catch. But for the most part, he's probably going to be struggling out there because, I mean, all the attention is going to be on him, and Pitts is still a rookie, so he's still learning. And it's the first time he's going to have to play Bill Belichick. So I'm wishing him the best. He's one of my favorite tight ends out there, but this is definitely this will definitely be a tough spot here. But with that being said, Hayden Hurst is currently out for the Falcons, and Lee Smith did not play last week, so yeah, he got 0 snaps, but he's going to step into the tight end 2 role, and if he's going to be on the field, which he's going to be, and if he gets a target or 2, Kyle Pitts is getting blanketed. Lee Smith is not a bad value play at only $200. I do want to mention Kyle Pitts is not really even a tight end because if you're looking at where he is prior to the snap so far this year, like only 20% of his snaps are actually inside. 32% out wide and 47% in the slot, and only 3% the block. So really just think of Kyle Pitts as a wide receiver. Just need to mention that really quick. But Lee Smith, actually grading as one of the better value plays on these slates. So keep him on your radar today. And as far as the Patriots go, and then moving on to the Patriots, we have Hunter Henry at $7,000, really expensive there. Then Jonnu Smith at $2,400. He is currently questionable for this game. We'll have to see if he plays or not. If he plays, I like Jonnu Smith a lot at only $2,400. I know Hunter Henry has been scoring so many touchdowns recently, like 5 touchdowns the past 4 or 5 games. But these guys typically split snaps, and Jonnu Smith is still fairly involved in this offense. If you look at their averages so far this season, I mean, something great, but 4.2 targets per game for Henry compared to 3.5 for Jonnu Smith. Is that really worth the near $5,000 pricing difference on a 12.9% target share and 11.3% target share? Like, if we're getting 55% of the snaps for Henry and 45% like we saw in week 9 for these guys, I would take Jonnu Smith all day on a point per dollar basis. Like, if he catches a couple of balls or happens to get to the end zone at $2,400, just another nice cheap pass catching option with Mac Jones. So I do like Jonnu Smith a lot if he happens to play as of right now. We have no idea if he's not, but if he's in, I do like him quite a bit. As far as defenses go, you guys know my stance on him, although the problem is the stance has been poor because they keep scoring defensive touchdowns. Now, it's very fluky. It's not going to keep happening, but it seems to keep happening, and it seems to keep happening for the defense that is a big underdog, which just makes no sense to play them because you have a bunch of, let's say, for example, Rams stacks. Why would I play a bunch of 49ers defense? So, unfortunately, that has been the case the past couple of weeks, is the Titans and 49ers defenses versus the Rams, I'm just remembering those showdown slates specifically, have scored defensive touchdowns. But if that doesn't happen, they're probably not going to be optimal because the Patriots defense at $5,600, they're going to have to hold their ground around like 10 to 12 points just to be optimal, because I just don't really see that happening. Falcons defense versus the Patriots, yeah, they're cheaper, but you're going to have a bunch of Patriots stacks, so it just really make a lot of sense to want to play the Falcons alongside a bunch of Patriots. Like, they're fine to play like both these defenses like 5 to 15%, but I don't see any reason to go overboard on that, and I would not play any of them in the captain spot. They keep scoring defensive touchdowns, whatever, I'll take the L, but even then you can still put together some really strong lineups without having defenses, even if they score touchdowns, because they can still lose points throughout the game. And then as far as the kickers go, Nick Folk is currently questionable for this game, so I'm not even sure if he's going to play. There's like 5 kickers listed for the Patriots on DraftKings, so whoever starts will be viable. I think Nick Folk is a fine cash game play. The ceilings are always low for kickers, but their floors are decently high, which makes them more suitable for cash games, I would say, than tournaments. I'm typically even to the field or underweight on kickers in general. And then as far as captain goes, I usually just X them out, or maybe a max of 1 if it's Justin Tucker, but that is not the case on this slate. So then finishing this lineup off, we could go a couple of ways. If we want to go expensive than a dirt cheap option, we could go with like a Kendrick Bourne here in the flex spot. Then at $200 left, we could use a guy like Lee Smith, who he did miss last week, so obviously no production. But before that, 2-3 targets in week 7 and week 5, 3 in week 3, 1 in week 2. Like, it's not like it's a lock that he's going to get a ton of volume, but with no Hayden Hurst, this definitely helps him out a little bit. So I don't hate Lee Smith here, and that would not be a bad play in this lineup. If you wanted to go more balanced, we could go with maybe like a Nelson Aguilar instead of a Kendrick Bourne, which Nelson Aguilar has been getting similar volume to Bourne anyway, and that would leave us $2,800 left. And if Jonnu Smith happened to play, we could plug him in. That leaves us $400 remaining. We could go with a kicker if we wanted. I'll let you guys use your imagination on that one. But with that being said, I think that'll be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. If you're bidding 150 lineups tonight, I use my optimizer each and every single showdown slate, and it has been quite successful so far this year. There's a bunch of rules and groupings and all that fun stuff that you can put together on it, and I do find it quite helpful. I also cover the NBA in addition to the NFL, then NASCAR and MLB once those seasons start back up again. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by Prize Picks, just so you verse the projections. And as of right now, if you're new sign over there, you can get a free money bonus up to $100. And use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. I think that'll be it. I'll stop rambling. I hope you guys enjoyed the game tonight, even if it might not be the greatest on paper.